I think it's safe to say that I'm a bit of a NickToons nut. How can you tell? There has been countless debates through the decades, but only a few that seem to stand the test of time. Cats vs. dogs, Coke vs. Pepsi, and Sega vs. Nintendo, but in the animation space, it was always Nick vs. Cartoon Network. Growing up in the 2000s, honestly the golden era for both networks, there were a lot of great shows that have stuck with me after all these years. On CN, we got Courage the Cowardly Dog, Samurai Jack, Johnny Bravo, Hi Hi Puffy Ami Yumi, Ben 10, as well as the legacy WB and DC content with Duck Dodgers, the Batman, original Teen Titans, and What's New Scooby-Doo. On Nick, we got SpongeBob, Jimmy Neutron, Danny Phantom, The Fairly OddParents, Chalk Zone, El Tigre, and My Life as a Teenage Robot, just to name a few. And while I used to watch both almost equally, I found I haven't been able to return to most of the Cartoon Network shows I once enjoyed, outside of the ones I named anyways, and have instead gravitated toward the Nicktoons, none of which I've actually fallen off of. The reason I think that's been the case, other than them being more charming and full of style, is because of a larger library of Nick games than Cartoon Network titles. And as a gamer, that appeals to me. Heck, one of my very first video games I can remember playing when the PS2 just came out was SpongeBob Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. And though I don't have much to do with the original Fairly OddParents these days, these Nick games are where most of my engagement with the series came from. And also the Jimmy Timmy Power Hours, which wasn't just a simple crossover trilogy between Jimmy Neutron and the Fairly OddParents, one of the best crossovers in animation history. But it was the base for an even bigger crossover that's actually canon to both shows and more, NickToons Unite. Having released about a year and a half after that first Power Hour, this game also brought Danny Phantom and SpongeBob SquarePants into the fray. It released during the height of popularity for all four shows, and all of them already had video games to call their own anyway, so this was actually kind of a genius move. This was a Nick's version of the Avengers, and that's just straight up cool. Where was Cartoon Network during all this? Unite spawned multiple sequels as yearly releases, and while the games weren't received the best, though I still personally enjoy them, they did update the gameplay style in the sequels, started expanding the show roster with the third game, there was a Dig game where Invader Zim was the main villain, and finally they ditched the Fairly OddParents in the fourth and final console game in the series. One of the core, foundational shows of this crossover series was just mysteriously yeeted from existence for seemingly no reason. The Fairly OddParents never appeared in any more console games afterward, and also the Nicktoons series was never heard from again. Until now, 18 years later, enter Nicktoons and the Dice of Destiny in the year 2025. Major thanks to GameMill for sending over a PS5 review code for the channel. I'm very glad to keep this tradition going of reviewing these crossovers as they release, so yeah. If you guys want to see more Nick and SpongeBob game reviews like this one, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell, cause I'm serving up more soon. Anyway, because of how dead the Nicktoons series was up to this point, its reveal during Summer Game Fest was something I legit never even would have put on my bingo card for the year. Seriously, I gave up all hope of the series ever coming back after we only got SpongeBob titles from the 2018 THQ Nordic list, with Nick Brawl 2 being the closest we've had to a new one, even with Timmy Turner's absence. That said, they hooked my interest right out of the gate, cause the Nicktoons name, in the world of video games, has a legacy attached to it. So we kinda knew that the original Unite crew was going to get reunited, especially with the Fairly OddParents also being confirmed from the get-go. But a lot of people were actually quick to dismiss this game, and I can understand why. This isn't the 3D platformer slash beat 'em up that we've come to expect from this series, and it also kinda looks like a mobile game cause of its use of flash animation. I personally don't have an issue with the visuals, whether it's the cutscenes, characters, and environments. I think it's pretty solid and charming. The only issue I have though is Timmy looks pretty dang strange in the opening cutscene, but he looks perfectly fine the rest of the game. Just wanna throw that out there. Everything has a bounce to it like SpongeBob's running animation, and because everything's presented in a 2D format, it does feel like you're playing through an episode of any of the shows represented, and because most of these shows were already in 2D, barring TMNT 2012 and Jimmy Neutron, which have technically appeared in 2D thanks to the Transdimensional Turtles episode for TMNT and the aforementioned Power Hours for Jimmy Neutron. Heck, Carl's design is straight up from the Power Hours.
Where are we? This place seems dangerous, and I didn't even have time to pack extra underwear.
Seeing Carl Weezer in official material in the current year is so dang surreal.
Are you going to finish that croissant?
Maybe not as surreal as seeing Hugh return in Nick Brawl 1, but dang it, just seeing these characters again is enough to bring a smile to my face regardless. Hey guys, future me here. I was gonna say this as a spoiler, but due to recent events, I figured I'd go ahead and put it here. But Sheen's also in this game. It's great to see him and Jimmy interacting again. Sadly though, the reunion was short-lived, as the voice behind Sheen, Jeff Garcia, passed away roughly 3 months after the game released. On the same day, we also lost to Jim Ward, known to the Fairly OddParents community as Doug Dimmadome, and to the Ratchet & Clank community as Captain Quark, who had already retired from the role before Rift Apart launched due to health reasons. This was a 1-2 punch I simply didn't expect. These guys played a large part in our childhoods by bringing these memorable characters to life. Some of my favorites in both series, and partially why I'm here talking about these games and shows in the first place. So, rest in peace, legends. Thanks for all the memories, and if that Jimmy Neutron film sequel is actually happening, it just wouldn't be the same without Jeff doing Sheen. I just can't see anyone else doing the character justice. Anyway, with that rather depressing news out of the way, let's get back to my past self. Circling back to this not being a 3D platformer like past games, even though all the platforming has been removed from this entry, at its core, this is a spiritual successor to those original games, specifically Unite, but also some sprinkles of the other games. The beat-em-up aspect is still present, though I don't want to call Unite's combat clunky, cause it's not. But there's a flow to DICE that I can't help but be impressed with when combining dodges and attack combos. The focus on up to 4-player drop-in, drop-out co-op, character portraits changing to reflect how much damage they've taken, characters actually return to having unlockable standout abilities, though purely for combat purposes this time around. Like Danny's ability to actually duplicate himself for the first time in a video game, something he was successfully able to do for the first time in Season 2's Rainstorm. Some of these abilities require a certain amount of energy to use, like in Unite, though thankfully without the spammable reminder they're out.
I need power! I need power! I need power! I need power!
The idea of visiting each world from the respective shows returns from Unite, Toybots, and Globs of Doom, albeit medieval versions of these locations while following the same level structure of Unite. 3 standard levels based on a single show, then the boss of that world. Though SpongeBob and Fairly OddParents bookended both ends of the game with a whopping 8 levels apiece, SpongeBob got 4 more in the middle while everyone else got the standard 4, resulting in some shows feeling a bit short-handed when compared to the previous games. Teenage Robot, Danny Phantom, and Jimmy Neutron failed to have one or a combination of worlds, NPCs, and or boss representation. They all have their own standard enemies to deal with, like the Mongros, aka the big twonkies from Jimmy Neutron courtesy of the GBA manual, and the Clusterbots from Teenage Robot, but the other character aspects for these 3 weren't quite as balanced out as I was hoping for. There's even a few nods to that original series of games once Danny Phantom joins the team. This clip really sent the internet into a frenzy, getting the attention of people who initially said nothing about the game for months, solely because of the original Unite crew finally reuniting for the first time since 2007's Toybots. I'll get into this a bit later. The Dice of Destiny also released a month before the 20th anniversary of NickToons Unite, Whether or not this was intentional, I don't know, because Fair Play Labs dropped an NASB 2 in late 2023 with multiple DLCs and updates dropping throughout 2024, which possibly gave this game a 2-year development cycle with help from Petite Fabric, of course. And that's what I like to see, games with 2 to 3 year development times that don't have to be 100 hours long, which just so happened to be how long it took to develop Game of the Year winner Astrobot. Now DICE is also a very short game. It only took roughly 8 hours to finish it with 3 players on every level's highest difficulty, which actually made things surprisingly easier than what I tried doing single-handedly in about half the time. Until we got to the endgame, that's when the difficulty really started kicking in. So I think it's safe to say, probably a couple more hours on a single player run. And if we did everything, cause we did skip a couple of side missions, some on purpose and some on accident, NickToons Unite, as well as the other pre-DICE games, can be finished in roughly 5 to 10 hours, depending on the number of players and upgraded items you have. So, in that sense, it was developed with the mindset of not overstaying its welcome, while respecting the player's time and giving him a good crossover story. One that also brings back the character dialogue boxes from Unite. Okay, they're similar, they're not the exact same thing. And instead of half them not being voiced, despite having pretty much everyone available in the studio, making this simultaneously the most confusing and annoying thing in the game, everyone is fully voiced in DICE, no matter the circumstances. I do want to point out some of these character renders in the dialogue boxes. Seeing as Wanda's lipstick and wand are missing in a few of these, I don't think that's supposed to happen, so I did want to point that out. Regardless, there was a lot of respect for the original Nicktoons series of games, and an overall passion for these shows in Dice of Destiny. It's something I praised in Nick Brawl 2 as well, even if the playable characters never interacted with characters from outside their own shows, like they do with characters from the same show. But the long overdue reunions were absolutely appreciated, and the same applies here as well. Danny and Embers were a highlight. Yes, they were in NASB 2 together, but they just said a line or two and nothing else for the rest of the game, unlike the other Danny Phantom character pairings. In DICE, it felt like actual banter from the show, though characters like Sam, Tucker, and even Jazz are still missing from this new era of crossovers, and that still upsets me. Sam's VA is already in these games, so that's half the work right there. And she's been missing from these games since Toybots, outright skipping Globs of Doom. The Crimson Chin, though I honestly see him as the Captain Quark of this game, I loved hearing what he had to say every chance I got.
I'd just as soon help a child get his cat out of a tree. That's what being a real hero is all about. Of course, it would have helped if I hadn't handed the kid the entire tree with his cat still in it. You live and learn.
Sorry, I had to. Okay, I'm jumping all over the place, but I wanted to make sure I made as many comparisons as I could to get the point across on how DICE respects Unite. So let's start from the beginning of the game. Okay, nice stock art of Timmy's house. Putting aside the intro we've seen before, where Timmy's building up an epic tale that SpongeBob interrupts, classic, we arrive at the main menu and... Okay, we gotta talk about the soundtrack, because it wasn't even part of the marketing like NASB 2's was. I actually enjoy DICE's music, and it was handled by Carlos Aguilar, quite literally half of a composing duo behind NASB 2's soundtrack. An already great soundtrack that fits these characters and their worlds. I'm not great at describing the type of music used in Jenny or Jimmy's stages, but having stuff like clocks ticking, bells ringing, time slowing down and speeding back up incorporated into the music for Clockwork's lair just makes this such a unique soundtrack. And while I think DICE's doesn't necessarily have the same punch as NASB 2's, pun intended, it is still a good soundtrack, as it does feature certain elements from each show, like SpongeBob featuring a tropical aquatic theme, or the Fairly OddParents even having a bit of piano amidst the medieval instrumentals. The fight against Ember was like, screw the medieval stuff, let's rock. really wish there was a voice option in the settings, because nobody uploaded the soundtrack anywhere, and this is what I had to deal with. Not to mention the cutscenes being way quieter than the actual game, then the game gets too loud cause I had to turn the volume up for the cutscene. Hold on a second. Is that Elite Motive for the Above the Road song from SquarePants Family Vacation in Season 8?
Let's all sing the Above the Road song. I wanna sing it all day long.
I'm fully convinced it is. Let's see if there's any more. Yep, that's definitely the opening portion of a Danny Phantom theme song. Okay, I legit cannot tell which TMNT 2012 intro is being referenced here. According to the Steam Q&A before release, the reason these references are here is A, because the music is otherwise wholly original compositions, and B, the music team went super deep to bring in elements and references to the compositions that make them really have the identity of the characters and shows they were inspired in. Anyway, back to the story. Upon starting a new game, we're treated to yet another intro cutscene, with Timmy winning yet another game of Creatures and Chasms. That's definitely not a parody of anything, right? Who am I kidding? If it exists, the Fairly OddParents are going to parody it. Nothing's safe from them. But still, it is nice to see the trio back together again since the original show's final cancellation. No, I'm not counting the live-action projects. As far as I'm concerned, those do not exist. We did get a new Wish, though, that didn't feature Timmy Turner as the main character, but he really got referenced a bunch.
And you're in big trouble for being so mean to Timmy! Dad!
I love this episode. After winning so much and knowing that he just win again, he wishes that he was playing in the board game for real. Oh, we're really doing the whole board game episode from A New Wish. Okay, I see you. To no one's surprise, the wish backfires due to a thump at the door, causing the dice to glow an eerie red, with Cosmo, being the idiot he is and I love him for it, can't even remember where he got the dice in the first place. They tear a hole in the fabric of time and space, dragging the trio and other Nicktoons characters into a new land. One where all their worlds become merged with each other. I actually had a similar idea for a PlayStation crossover game, but that'll be for another time. The trio awaken to meet SpongeBob, Sandy, Leonardo, and Katara. Introductions pursue, and then...
Hey! Where'd you get the cool fairies?
Okay, first you had no idea what fairies even were. I don't even think you got an explanation in those past games, and now you do? Oh, that's right, there was a Tooth Fairy episode a few years ago. Alright, I'll buy it.
Internet?
Classic Timmy Turner excuse.
What's the internet?
Okay, it's actually funny SpongeBob doesn't even know what the internet is. Actually, come to think of it, I don't even think I can recall a single instance in SpongeBob where the internet is even a thing. Yeah, there's computers and Plankton does use a smartphone in his own movie, but whenever one's in use, it's always calculation and business related. And whenever a character orders something, it's usually seen in a catalog or a TV ad, then delivered by a phone call order. Mr. Krabs does mention dial-up in Season 8, Karen displays a website order page in Season
12?
And SpongeBob infamously mentions streaming services in the Sandy movie. I know, it's probably because Steven Hillenburg wanted the show to be timeless by not including a lot of modern technology. It's probably why flip phones are still used in the most recent seasons. Me personally, I think the idea of everyone in Bikini Bottom being slow adopters of modern tech is just kinda funny. Anyway, first thing on the to-do list, track down a falling star. But first, we have to choose our character. There's 9 playable characters, but only 5 are available from the start. The others have to be unlocked by defeating the game's first 4 bosses. Plankton, Angelica, One I'll Keep a Mystery, and Ember McLean.
Wait a minute! Those are my dice!
Timmy's right! They came from his very own game!
Aw, well, boo-hoo for you.
Okay, it is so funny how recent licensed games like Multiverses and now this keep on putting 2 of Tara Strong's most iconic characters into the same room and just insult each other. Honestly, perfect. So here's the breakdown of all the playable characters. SpongeBob is a Knight class character and mostly focuses on short-range melee combat. Honestly, a perfect starting character that really comes in handy for the more challenging aspects of the game. Timmy falls under the Wizard class, focusing on chaining attacks, with Cosmo and Wanda turning into various things, including a piñata.
Beat it! Beat it!
Whale. I'm glad to see Cosmo's got his priorities straight.
I'm not going back!
My gosh, what did you do? Sandy's a barbarian class with her skill set focusing on strength. The devs clearly knew how much people loved Sandy's infinite lasso combo in NASB 1, so they brought it back for ya. Oh, and this is officially the return of Sandy's hibernation form, just a few months before making another appearance as a boss fight in Titans of the Tide. Yes, I know, I'm super late to this. Leonardo's a samurai class, featuring a mix of long and short range attacks. Katara is a healer class, as the name suggests. She can heal other characters and focuses on mostly long-range combination moves that don't require constant input. Susie's an enchantress unlocked by defeating Plankton. Her moveset mostly focuses on passive moves like decoys, projectile shields, and Lego bricks that deal damage whenever an enemy moves. She can even summon a Reptar. Jimmy Neutron unlocks after defeating Angelica. He's an engineer class character whose moveset almost entirely consists of turret spawning. The laser sword from the Feud episode returns as his short-range attack. He's got a basic blaster for long range and Goddard for a passive protective companion. Such a good boy when he ain't getting stuck. I just want to add that I don't know if any issues I've been and will be mentioning have been fixed. Steam's saying it's not been patched yet, but I also haven't played the game in months due to how crazy this release season's been between SpongeBob, Pac-Man, and Sonic Racing, which is partially why this video's been taking so long to get done. So I wanted to get that out of the way right now. From this point forward, these are my post-hiatus thoughts on the game, so let's get back to it. Danny Phantom unlocks after beating, spoiler, he is a rogue class character. As mentioned earlier, he can duplicate himself for double damage. The clone also uses the same moves for double the effectiveness. Why settle for one ghostly whale when you can have two? This move in particular returns from Unite and pushes enemies away while dealing damage in all directions instead of one. The clone can sometimes get stuck. Not entirely sure that's intentional. There is a recall feature so it comes back to Danny's position, so maybe it is intentional? His standard and long-range attacks focus on blades, not exactly a weapon I expected Danny to ever use, but hey, it's pretty cool and perfect for up-close combos. And finally, Jenny XJ9 Wakeman from My Life as a Teenage Robot is a Ranger class character. She's a mix of short and long range attacks, despite the name implying a long range primarily. That said, we actually get to see what this thing does. Why the heck did we just get the swords in NASB 2? This would have been way cooler! Now, of course, this ability, alongside Goofy Goober mode, Hibernation Sandy mode, Duplicate Danny, and the other characters' special moves that are the most powerful moves in the game, are locked behind character upgrades, so it'll be a little bit before you even see these in action. Some a little faster than others, on account that every single character, when they upgrade, is in sync with all the other characters. Which means more abilities to work with when you unlock more characters. And even when you do activate them, once they're activated, there is a massive cooldown behind them. So you can't use it again until it cools down. You also can't switch it out for another ability while it's on cooldown. I can only assume this was done so the game wouldn't be too easy, and players would ignore the other aspects of the game that'll aid in your travels. Those other aspects being armor, potions, and talismans, each increasing your character's stats, though I prioritize defense and attack over everything else. And you probably have plenty of resources to upgrade them, as gold and crystals are pretty easy to come by. They're literally everywhere, except for special crystals that are only acquired from defeating harder versions of bosses that are tied to side quests. To access these shops, we must reach the new hub world known as the Tangle. No, not that Tangle. We arrive here after realizing that the falling stars that were mentioned before were actually Timmy's Dice of Power. and to get them back home, they need to reclaim all of them. Timmy's like, screw that, and tries to wish everything back to the way it was, but plot armor! So we get to the Tangle, and it's a nice little area to explore that expands over time with new shops and characters showing up regularly. It actually kinda reminds me of Camp Castaway from Volcano Island, and even functions kind of the same, but a bit more fleshed out. You can access every level in the game from the center portal. We can talk to Pearl to switch characters, but after we do something for her, acting as a tutorial for how main and side quests work in this game. After defeating every boss in the game, well, most of them, we come back, talk to her, and get a proper introduction to every new playable character.
Oh, that was easy.
Really? It's pretty dangerous out there.
Not when you have these.
Oh, will you be my battle buddy?
Just seeing Jenny finally interacting with the main squad in a console game, and not just an unlockable character with no story interaction with the main cast or having handheld exclusive interactions, makes me so dang happy. It might have taken since the concept stages of 2006's Volcano Island to finally give her the same treatment, but we made it. I just wish she could have gotten the same NPC and boss treatment as everybody else though. After that, we meet Carl, and he's holding a giant axe. Listen, the Carl we know wouldn't be able to hold this thing up.
Ow, my foot! Ow, my neck! My head!
He runs the weapons shop, where you can buy more powerful versions of the weapons you currently use. And as you progress through the game, he'll offer higher level ones, alongside armor, both of which, alongside talismans, can be taken to Donatello for upgrades via standard crystals from defeated enemies. And finally, Sokka's shop is where you'll be buying potions, which were useful for a while, but eventually my squad just resorted to health potions and not much else. Partially because no others can be equipped besides these. I don't understand why we couldn't have these equipped on the D-pad like any other game, but okay. You'll also be making all the health and defense upgrades here, with the special crystals you've gained from doing side missions via the aforementioned hard mode bosses. And these are where the main challenge of the game comes in, and where all your equipment matters the most. The standard bosses, not counting endgame bosses, and depending on how many players you have in your crew, aren't usually an issue. Plankton was easy to deal with in both single and multiplayer, though it could be because he's considered a mini-boss and not considered a main boss. Angelica was a major difficulty spike, very early in the game. Yes, it was the hardest difficulty, but still. I spent over 15 minutes doing this boss on the first try with Leonardo solo, and lost on account of me not realizing I can dodge these damage rings. This game ain't messing around. I came back with SpongeBob, who has an invincibility patty, and finished this boss 5 minutes faster.
Blondes do have more fun.
Alley-oop! It's true. Blondes do have more fun.
Oh. I did not expect a Crash Twinsanity reference in this, and good on them. One of the best Crash games right there.
Ah! Keep back, you weak-minded fool!
Now, I'm using these two bosses as an example, cause the harder mode versions are even more difficult. Who could have possibly guessed? Angelica's is pretty straightforward, just a harder version, no catch. Plankton's, though, proved a lot more challenging, because there's a damage limit. Towards you. So once again, I did this solo and had to bring in SpongeBob cause Susie wasn't up to snuff. In multiplayer though, this was an absolute cakewalk. Now thankfully, these missions are exclusive to the side content and don't interfere with the flow of the main story. Unless you count not being able to make important upgrades cause of the difficulty curve this game provides. Right, I forgot all about this. So after the whole crew's assembled, we defeat the Dirty Bubble, very unexpected boss fight. He then becomes the Clean Bubble, one of the unexpected references to Season 12 of the show, alongside Karen's mention of Chip. Thank goodness I caught up on the show long before the game launched, otherwise I would have been lost. So after that, we enter the world of The Last Airbender, where, upon arriving, we meet Zuko.
It's hard to explain.
Who's this dreamboat anyway?
I'm so sorry for all you Denny shippers out there. Not really, cause I can care less about that stuff. Especially since this guy hinders us from continuing the story by taking the damage limit side content and applying it to a normal stage. Up to this point, standard levels haven't been a problem no matter how many players are on your crew. You just go from point A to point B, solve the only few puzzles of the exact same type in the entire game, and that's it. Nothing in the main campaign up to this point prepared us for anything like this, and only proved more annoying when doing this with 3 players. So 2 of us had to drop out while I took care of this solo. I swear, if I was able to chuck Zuko's teacup into the ocean and avoid having to collect these stupid tea leaves, I would've. Worst mission in the entire game, practically impossible in multiplayer. And if I ever get into this show, I'd just be reminded of this mission whenever I see him, so I'd probably like him less than intended. Anyway, moving on. Seeing as I'm already on the topic of levels, I already talked about how they look, which are great aesthetically as they do capture the look of each show. However, I do feel like there's a lack of level progression within a single level unlike previous games. Perfect example is, we were on the 2nd or 3rd Ghost Zone area, and we were asking ourselves if we accidentally pressed the same level twice, because it felt like the exact same level we just did, just with different music. Turned out it was actually the next level. And I think the confusion came from the fact that certain levels do feature different layouts, or at least an altered camera angle, so that every time you enter or restart a level, there's at least 2 or 3 alternate setups that can occur, which is a neat detail, but it becomes a problem if it makes anyone feel like they're doing the same level twice. Sometimes you do it in reverse, a common but appreciated thing games do from time to time. I don't know though, something about this detail probably does need to be polished up a bit. Something else the levels have are these challenge pillars. Simply walk up to one, start a challenge, but what challenge you get is a roll of a die. You see what I did there? I don't think I've seen all the challenges that come out of these. Some are definitely easier than others. Sometimes it'll spawn chum buckets that make the ground inflict poison damage. Other times it'll be a constantly rotating laser. It's random every time, and I appreciate it to spice up the levels a bit. Now I guess all that's left to go over is the story and the possibility of DLC as well as the currently existing DLC. So, if you want to go into the game blind and want to skip ahead to the DLC and final thoughts portion, just go to the timestamp on screen. And if you're among those who are still here for the story, let's get into it. So after defeating Ember, we're introduced to the Dungeon Master.
That's right! And you're playing a game you'll never win!
The person who makes the rules of the game. This character was teased pretty early on in the story, but doesn't actually make an appearance until the halfway point. And I'll admit, they got me curious to the identity of this guy, who also leads the Flame Fatale, the main villain group of the game. The only clue that's given is the mouth being in the style of Fairly OddParents and Danny Phantom. But I was kinda expecting someone short, I don't know why, considering everyone's the same height in this game. So after claiming more dice of power to take on the Dungeon Master, after defeating Azula and rescuing Aang, the crew find a copy of the rules, toss it in the portal, and set off to Fairy World, only to find Jorgen isn't quite himself, and I don't just mean the pointy elf ears.
Come on out, Ember! You should stick to music, cause ventriloquism isn't your thing.
What can I say?
Legit did not see that coming. This is one aspect of these crossovers that I don't think any of these Nicktoons crossovers ever took advantage of up to this point. Taking a somewhat friendly character and turning him into a boss fight via a Danny Phantom villain overshadowing him, something Ember never actually did in the show, and it's nice to see the devs expand her abilities and interactions that the show did not. Considering characters like Walker could overshadow anybody, but most of the other villains in the show simply didn't. And having Ember not being very good at it gives enough reason for why she doesn't do it in the show. So yeah, Jorgen's a boss for the first time in any Fairly OddParents or Nicktoons game, so that was a nice curveball, and where the base versions of the bosses really started becoming difficult. We're near the end of it all, so it makes sense. Unlike the difficulty spike that was in Joica from earlier, compared to Ember and Azula, who were much easier in comparison. After freeing Jorgen, it's time to make all the last minute preparations before starting the endgame.
One montage coming up!
Sorry, Timmy.
Man, Really wanted a montage.
Same here, Timmy. Jorgen shows up again and explains what happened to him.
Anyhow, I was returning to the fairy village when I saw a pile of laundry on the ground.
Laundry, dude?
And then the laundry grew arms and legs and became a tiny little person and reached for the rules.
I may not be too much of a Fairly OddParents guy, but dang it, Jorgen's a top-tier character next to Cosmo and Wanda. He's just a really fun character to have around for how comical he is. And it's also fun to see how he bounces off himself because both him and Cosmo are voiced by the same guy. But now it's time for the grand finale. If Jorgen was tough, this should be... They legit pulled a Mysterio from Spider-Man 2. All this build-up just to go down in one hit. Whoa.
She.
It's Vicky. You know what? I probably should have seen this one coming. But what's up with the Fairly OddParents bosses having pointy ears? Why and where was this ever a thing? Anyway, she has the one-sided die, which I guess is more powerful than all the others, and... okay. Oh my gosh. It's the final boss of Breakin' the Rules! Okay, listen. I played Breakin' for the first time this year, and I know it's considered a favorite. Even though Shadow Showdown is a much more focused and polished game, this game has its problems, including the final boss, and not really feeling like a final boss. Something Shadow Showdown accomplished a lot better, as all you're doing is luring Dragon Vicky onto these buttons, and that's it. There's not much more to it than that. This time it's a full-blown boss fight for the second phase and posing a decent challenge. Something I also appreciated the team for doing with the Flying Dutchman back in Nazby 2 as one of the best Dutchman fights before Titans of the Tide came along. But surely there can't be another phase to this fight, considering all bosses in DICE only have 2 phases.
Not even if you tag in all your flame dames at the same time.
Now that's an idea, shellhead.
Dang it, Leo, you should have kept your mouth shut. Now we're in Sonic Boss Phase 3 territory. And hey, this is the very same dragon from the box art that caused so much speculation before launch, with people even thinking Danny was going to somehow be the final boss. Boy, were we wrong! This is the hardest boss in the game. I mean, it makes sense, it's the final boss, that mixes the abilities of the other Flame Fatale bosses. Thrashing and falling hazards from Angelica's boss, Azula's flames, and, well, I guess not much was pulled from Ember, but still. We actually lost on this one a couple of times on the hardest difficulties, and we're practically spamming health potions every chance we got, while trying to get that stun meter depleted as fast as possible. With the fight over, the one-sided die destroyed, Vicky reveals that she's the reason the wish backfired in the first place, because of one of her many attempts to humiliate Timmy also backfiring, causing her to be sent into a portal and finding the die that kickstarted her planned takeover. But now she's the one humiliated, and I actually did kind of feel bad for her for the first time in a while. Since the episode where Timmy wished he was her babysitter, honestly one of the best episodes for highlighting just how much of a jerk Timmy can be, and him eventually realizing it, only to not carry over into later episodes. This scene, which has no music in it by the way, and I mean that in a good way, felt like the team wanted to showcase some of Timmy's growth that the show was all over the place with, and bring closure to the two's relationship like a finale the original show never really got, even though we know she ain't gonna remember any of this anyway. Man, it is so weird seeing Timmy and Vicky share the same height. We head back to the Tangle one last time so Timmy can wish everyone back home. But there's a catch.
I'll do more than that. I'm gonna wish this never happened to begin with.
Oh, we're really doing this again, aren't we? You already pulled a Sonic 06 in Nazby 2 and now in DICE? I mean, at least it makes sense within the rules of the Danny Phantom and Fairly OddParents universes, and doesn't frustrate me like the Adventures of Puss in Boots did when its ending pulled the same thing, but completely tripped on itself. I just feel like it's a cheap move, so we don't have any continuity between any of these modern crossovers, like the original series of games had, that this game keeps referencing throughout the ending, that Jimmy suggests the timeline we know from a PS2 era that connects with the Jimmy Timmy Power Hours is a parallel universe.
What about the perpendicular ones?
Dang, SpongeBob's pretty smart in this game. And it's not the first time either. Definitely not what I expect from modern SpongeBob.
Our minds may forget each other's faces, but our hearts will always remember our friendship.
Aw, SpongeBob. That was sweet.
Best interaction in the game. I don't care if it's a send-off to a story that erases itself from the timeline. That was so worth it. But yeah, don't do the Sonic 06 thing again, it's all I ask. So Timmy makes the wish, everyone goes home, and we go straight to the credits dimension. Nicktoons and the Dice of Destiny was honestly a pretty enjoyable game, all things considered. I had a fun time with it despite some issues here and there, like the occasional inconsistent subtitles.
Gloat? What is gloat?
Spots that look like you should be able to reach but can't. Characters constantly taking damage but also not taking damage at the same time. What is happening here? And Danny somehow getting stuck like this when activating one of the endgame challenges. I could not break free like usual, which caused major issues for everyone else in my party cause the camera was not cooperating. Outside of that, it was pretty solid. Story-wise, it's probably my favorite on account of Jenny having an active role instead of just being here. But it's also tied with Volcano Island for me. And I'm sure it'll make Fairly OddParents fans happy while awaiting a new wish to get renewed for a second season. Will it happen? I don't know. Animation-wise, I do think there were a couple of cutscenes that could have used a bit more work. I'm not saying to ditch the flash animation altogether, as I found it pretty charming. I just hope some more budget can be put into the next game's cutscenes, whether it be 2D or 3D. Gameplay-wise, I do miss the platforming and the inclusion of ability-based puzzles from Unite, so that does hurt my opinion on the gameplay slightly. But it's still good, I just prefer the original trilogy on the gameplay front more. Now, if they can take DICE's combat flow and throw some platforming in there for the sequel, I think it'll be a much more varied gameplay experience that's much closer to Unite. Now, price-wise is where I think people will or have already drawn the line on when it comes to this game. As I already established, the game only takes roughly 8 hours to do most of everything. And for a $50 price point, I can see why people would be turned off on it. You see, GameMill games starting with NASB 2 have felt very overpriced, especially when you count in all the DLC and season passes that dropped at launch. But on the bright side, it is a GameMill game, so therefore both the games and DLCs frequently go on sale. I do think both games are well worth your time, especially if you can find both of them and the DLCs on sale. Oh, right. So Dice of Destiny also has DLC called the Wardrobe of Wonder, giving each of the 9 playable characters a brand new costume. Now that doesn't sound too bad, until we see the price. A whopping $15 for 9 costumes! Each of the costumes being pulled from each show. Danny's is his human form, Sandy's is the Dark Knight from Dungeons & Dragons, and so on and so forth. But unless you find this particular DLC on sale, which I've already seen it go on sale for like $9, I don't really recommend getting it. NASB 2 also had this costume DLC issue, where they charged $20 for 25 costumes, one for every character on the base roster, which is actually better than what DICE is doing. But even then, it's still too much. And I got all the DLC for these games for free, so I'm right there with you guys. That said, the official accounts did put up a poll back in October asking if we'd like to see character DLC in the next few months. So there's definitely interest in adding more characters. I don't know if this will include levels or bosses to make up for some of the rep imbalance I mentioned earlier for the existing shows. I don't know. It's been a few months and we still haven't heard anything outside of the Switch 2 port. But rest assured, if it happens, I will be sure to talk about it. Unless it relates to the Loud House, in that case I will not. Which I'm kinda surprised there hasn't been a rep for that show in DICE, considering the show's been repped in every single one of these GameMill crossovers since Nick Kart Racers 2. But you don't see me complaining. So yeah, if you're a Nicktoons fan who's waited decades for a new crossover story with the Big Four, simply enjoy the shows on their own, or just an RPG fan, I do recommend checking out Dice of Destiny when it goes on sale. It's a fun time, especially in multiplayer, and putting a few bugs aside that'll hopefully get patched out with future DLC, I do think it's worth your time. But enough from me, I want to hear what you guys got to say about this game. Have you played it? Have you not played it? Waiting for it to go on sale? And who's your favorite character? Be sure to leave everything down in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell for more SpongeBob and Nicktoons content. And thanks to GameMill for the code and DLC. I know this probably would have been preferred to release months ago, which was the plan, but I'm only one guy running this channel amidst a busy release season. I can only do so much! And yes, I know this video is releasing in January 2026, so Happy New Year, guys! Now, speaking of content, I do want to say that unscripted videos will be returning. I posted a poll about it in the community tab some months ago, and you guys seem to want that type of content back after I scrapped it many years ago in favor of scripting, so I'm getting to work on some stuff after this. That way, I can work on these faster to produce videos in tandem with the larger scripted videos, either for breaking news or if something pops up in the community I feel is worth talking about. And if you want a taste of how that content will go check out my completely unscripted Ratchet & Clank Ranger Rumble video I put up recently. But anyway, I've been Blue Knight. Thanks so much for watching and for the constant support. I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay hydrated.